Yeah, I'd like to learn a little bit about what you got going on, John. Can you tell us a little about your company and what you guys do and what you advocate for?
Absolutely, yeah. We're a cybersecurity company, so we provide services across kind of the spectrum of cybersecurity for small and mid-sized businesses. But really, lately, our focus has been on AI, large language model security, and safeguards around that. As companies adopt this into their workflows, we're providing consulting and testing services around how they can secure that AI within their environments.
Beautiful. I hear a lot of companies asking me to have their own private LLM, which is a large language model, instituted at their organization. I think that it has to come with some kind of a warning, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that most folks, when it comes to cybersecurity, they're testing apps, they're testing the network. Um, as we introduce large language models into these workflows and into environments, there's a lot of oversight. A lot of Oversight's the wrong word, I should say. I'm sorry. There's people aren't paying enough attention to it as a potential
Yeah.
vulnerability or a potential weakness in that process. Yeah, it's definitely something that as it continues to be adopted so rapidly as it is, more people should be thinking about what level of exposure these large language models are providing those organizations.
Yeah, I think people have a false level of security in their mind, thinking, "Hey, it's AI, so it's safe, right? So I could just ask it whatever I want." And we've learned recently they're getting very creative. These people trying to mine data from you. They're buying URLs to get their evildoer sites, if you will, to click into AI and give false information and to start phishing them. So it's growing pretty fast, and we're in the business, and we're learning, every day something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's both sides to it. So AI can be really powerful for use in business and kind of accelerating growth and everything else. But on the flip side, it can also be used to accelerate malicious acts
Hmm.
and I think a very basic example is we will see a drop in some of the telltale phishing signs that we used to see, such as poor English and poor grammar in emails, because now these guys can use AI and craft perfect Queen's English emails to fish people with, so it becomes harder to spot. But yeah, I agree, absolutely. It's yeah,
I love the slip in with the
yeah,
Queen's English there. He's
Yeah.
not from the UK at all.
Yeah, my Medina, Ohio accent. Now I can't hide. So now they could even track me.
I did have a couple of questions. I wanted to kind of run down a couple of scenarios and kind of just pick your brain a little bit if I could. So, assuming that this is something that companies are going to want to delve into in the next, well, now to like the next 2 to 3 years, with it all evolving so fast, what are we supposed to be looking out for? Like, how are we supposed to understand what we can put into an LLM, how it should be secured, and like, I guess like the overarching use case for an LLM besides just using Chat or Gemini or something just to ask it a quick question. Some people are putting in. I literally had a customer explain to me that they had paid somebody to develop an application for them. That wasn't really an application. It was really just a prompt that they made in OpenAI that they proceeded to dump all of their financial information into for their whole organization to get a certain report they wanted. I asked, well, where are you hosting this at? And he's like, well, it's just attached to ChatGPT. So what would you say to that?
so I think there's a couple of factors that play into that. First off, organizational risk tolerance and organizational policy. So as a company, what are you prepared to accept? What are you prepared to allow for your employees to do? And set some kind of framework and policy around that. Secondly, is what LLM are you using? How is that data stored? Where is it stored? Some of these guys do offer a kind of a higher tier of security. They guarantee HIPAA or SOC 2 in their data storage. So again, that kind of feeds into the risk tolerance component if you're letting people use those more open models, the publicly available ones, right? But then as you move into the sphere of having large language models in closed environments or in controlled, so if you're deploying it in AWS or in Azure, then you have to think about again, training data, what you're feeding it, and then how is that interacting? If it's customer facing, is it interacting with someone who is potentially talking to that LLM, like a chatbot or something similar? But when it comes to financial data or trade secrets, things like that, we would be more mindful of where's the data being stored, how is it being stored, the same way you would treat any other kind of sensitive data for an
Encryption at
organization.
rest,
Encryption at rest,
transit, all
yeah,
that stuff.
exactly, things like that. And one thing that I think is more recent than not is we also have to think about how are they using that data? How is OpenAI or Anthropic, how are they using that data? Because we've seen recently Sam Altman saying that they are saving data for law enforcement use and they are scanning data. So you have to kind of factor that in as well, that even if you're putting it into a closed or open model, there's still a chance that someone at that company is going to be able to see that data as well.
That's a great point. And some businesses, they may have both. They may have closed, they may have open, such as us here at CTMS. We're developing our own closed environment for our inside projects, and then also for our customers who want that security, that next level.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's safe to say, to some degree, whether or not you, as an organization, allow it or not, employees are using ChatGPT, in whether it's just a marketing or whatever it might be. I think that there's no way you can fully combat that, especially like we have a remote workforce. So we set kind of a framework around what you can and can't do with ChatGPT, and in some cases we even pay for it for employees to be able to control that. But I think everyone is using it, whether it's on their phone, whether it's on a company device. There's no real way you can stop it.
So would that be something you'd have to put into like almost like a company handbook, like an acceptable use policy, like you would do normally for the internet or something?
Yeah, I think acceptable use is a great example now, and I think that's where it has to be. Because everyone is I think arguably the most used application right now.
I have a
everywhere.
wrinkle.
Yeah.
I have a wrinkle. So we deal with a lot of different clients, as you do. I have clients telling me that they want to block LLMs, all of them that are known. What do you say to somebody that requests that? Because we usually just go, okay, no problem. I've had attorneys, accounting firms, places that have sensitive data. I'm sure medical's kind of like in the same vein. Even somebody that has patents, like a manufacturer, they might be in there. You're kind of saying that you can't really get away from it. What would you recommend? Is it just the acceptable use, or is it like some other kind of guardrails you'd want them to understand?
So we are taking the line of if you can't beat them, you've got to kind of join them, right? So I think it's better that as an organization you are providing the platform and controlling what goes into it rather than just outright blocking it, because it's easy to block a domain on a company-owned device, but there's nothing to stop an employee from picking their phone up and typing that in on their own paid subscription of ChatGPT or on the free version, on a personally owned device. There's nothing, especially if they work at home. They might have the company device there and a personal computer there, and they're just, doing that. So we are kind of taking the line right now of if you're providing that for your employees, you're able to control and you're able to see what goes into it. You're able to control how it's stored to a degree, and again, I use OpenAI as the example where you can, there are different tiers, or if you're building your own ones to let employees use. I don't think an outright ban of it is realistic, where you can expect employees to not just use it on their phones and their own devices for company.
Well, especially in the education world, now they are encouraging it. Just last year, universities were no AI. They had these AI readers for the projects coming in. You get dinged if it's like, oh, AI, Chatty wrote it, right?
Yeah.
But now this year is a whole different deal. And I know this because my daughters are in college, and now they're actually teaching the students how to incorporate AI chat into their projects, which I think is smart because it's a tool. Use it. It's just like when the internet came out years ago, decades ago, people thought that their jobs were over and everything's going to change. Well, it actually amplified everything.
Yep.
And chat will probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's the right approach to take. It's not going away. So you've got to this is a adapt or fall behind scenario. And I think that same ethos applies to security around LLMs and kind of what we do. So yeah, kind of to your point, when a company is like, we just want to block it, it's not going anywhere, and they'll still be able to use it, still be able to access it. Yeah.
Would you suggest more of like a Big Brother training type mentality? Like, hey, let's speak together about it, make a policy, educate your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is what you can use it for. This is what we encourage you as a company to use it for. This is what we don't want you to use it for. If you're a doctor's office, don't put your patient information in to try and get diagnosis help, right? But you can use it to look up non-PHI information about certain conditions, for example. It's about kind of education, I think, because there also is a naivety as well about people who don't understand LLMs and how it works, which is it's perfectly safe for me to put any kind of information into this and just have a conversation with it without realizing that it's not a human on the other end of it. It's a system that has a memory and a hard drive, and that data is going on that hard drive.
So don't make it your boyfriend or your girlfriend because it's not alive.
Right. Yeah. What was that movie? Her?
Yeah.
It can get real crazy real quick. I do have a question. So you're all about protecting the LLM model and everything else. Prompt injection. It's something that kind of seems really scary when you could just say that you could mistype a prompt or say a certain thing or because it's natural language, and that's hacking now, which seems insane to me compared to what hacking is and was.
Yeah, and it's the way I look at it is non-linear, right? A penetration test or a hack on a system is relatively linear in how you approach it. You've identified a vulnerability, then you can identify an exploit, and that's either going to work or it's not going to work. With interacting with an LLM, you have a lot more, the scope is a lot wider. You have a lot more freedom of movement in terms of how you craft that prompt to get a certain response. And the better your understanding of LLMs and how they work, the more likely you are to be able to do that. And prompt injection has been around from day one. I mean, when OpenAI released the first model publicly, within days there was people who were sharing prompts to get around the guardrails that they had in place, to do stuff. And in a research capacity, we were able to get one of the models to a point where it was crafting malware.
Really?
within a chat. Yeah. The thing is, people post these prompts on Reddit, and within days, OpenAI has fixed put different guardrails up. But that's the kind of one of the points that I like to make is it's you got to look at it like a software application. Every time you make a minor tweak to your prompt, or every time there's an update to the model that you use, you need to retest it. You need to revisit that the prompt that you've got in place and make sure that it's engineered in a way so those guardrails are effective. Because every time there's a change, you run the risk of them not being effective anymore.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So we're an MSP. We're an MSP, John. We traditionally go into companies and we do some kind of a security analysis to see like what we have to do. Do you have proper endpoint protection? Do you have multi-factor authentication? Do you have a firewall? Does it have the updated subscription? But it sounds like we need to go a little bit deeper now with investigating like kind of what they're really using, what the day-to-day person is using.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that AI security or LLM security should be another piece of that puzzle, another question that you're asking, not something that's overlooked. And I think right now in the current environment, a lot of customers that you guys will more than likely come across will not be thinking like that. They'll be, to them, this is just another kind of tool in the arsenal, not really something they have to think about from a security perspective, because the education and the awareness around the risks of it just isn't there yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. People don't think their staff is, part of the solution for us when we come in, when we're doing our deep dive on what services that we could provide them. Their employees are very much part of that process now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. When I first spoke with you, I was kind of like a, 2x4 to the head kind of moment when you were explaining what you were doing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've never even heard of that before. Of course, that needs to be done. So that's obviously why we want to partner with you and be able to educate our customers and any of the events we go to just explain before you delve into this thing that could potentially save you a lot of money, make you a lot of money. It could also cost you a lot of money potentially.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the threat actors out there are, as you know, I think in most cases in cybersecurity, a little bit ahead of the curve. They know what they can use this for. They know how they can exploit it, and are doing so. And we're still looking at that kind of catch-up period where people on the other side of the fence are aware enough to be able to kind of put those safeguards in place.
Yeah, people don't realize these people that think of this stuff, that's all they do. That's their job.
Yep.
Is the hack businesses, to hack personal accounts, and that's how they make their living.
Yep.
So you're 100% right. They are, it seems, always 2 steps ahead sometimes. Just like when I learned these companies or these entities are buying URL through Google search to push them up, so AI grabs it and then we're getting their information.
Yep.
So people really need to be vigilant what they're reading for sure.
Absolutely. Yep.
So John, you've heard about hallucinations, right? And LLMs.
Yes.
So what would you do if somebody's like, I want to implement this, I want it to have it client facing, I want them to be able to interact back and forth with the bot. I could see obviously the potential gains in ROI you can get from that, the expediency and everything. But what are they risking if they have a bot giving the wrong information?
I mean, reputational damage, misinformed customers, depending on who's interacting with the bot. It's the one of the earlier examples of that, I think, would be the car dealerships. When they weren't properly training the AI models that they were using in their chatbots, and there was some funny stories about people kind of negotiating $1 vehicles with the chatbot and everything, and telling it to forget all its old prompts and things like that. So, but yeah, making sure that the training data, making sure that the guardrails are in place is fundamental there in its kind of absolution to prevent that from happening. Yeah.
I could see also where maybe in the near future, if not already, I'm not really sure. I'll have to look this up, but insurance, cybersecurity insurance, all these different types of insurances that companies need now just to interface daily with what's going on in the IT world, right? Technology. I could see this, your service specifically, almost being required in order to solidify somebody getting insured on a new application or a new model they're trying to instill inside their business when they have any kind of interaction with employee data, payroll, social security numbers, addresses. They have all this stuff in there. And then you go a step further and it's all their clients' information. So to me, it seems very important, very pertinent that we get the correct amount of security in there. We're testing it, vetting it as thoroughly as we can.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a really good point. How do you insure someone against it? Right? How do you insure someone against something that is a constantly moving target, very non-linear in its approach? There's many different branches that you can take in your approach to interacting with an LLM. Safeguards, prompt engineering, best practices like don't feed the LLM customer data or PII or PHI and things like that. But I'm not an insurance person, but I'm sure they're thinking about that right now because they can make more money off it and
sure.
through their policies. But
You want to start an insurance company?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we go through that with our insurance agent. One of the things they look for, if you have cyber insurance or if you're hacked and you have a big claim and their customers are then going after them, how they vet that is, what did you do to try to mitigate risk?
Yep.
So such as us with our security and Sophos and everything we use in your company, and you add all that up, that's a pretty good effort, to try to mitigate something happening, for sure, at least in an agent's eyes.
Yeah.
So that's why we try to educate our customers as much as we can, not only with the services we provide, but also, hey, do you have cyber insurance? No, why would I need that? Well, it's kind of a new world right now, and so we kind of go.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing that, by the end of this year or next year in terms of questionnaires from insurance companies around LLMs, what you're using, how you're safeguarding that, because they're going to catch on pretty quick if they haven't already that that's a big area of potential exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point.
I can speak from experience that we don't really have that piece that's going to be able to test all these different things. You know what I mean? Like, so it's almost important that some MSPs, MSSPs either bring it in house or partner with somebody like you guys that are going to be able to thoroughly vet these kind of things that we're adding. So with this, what's your approach when you're going into a client? Like say I wanted to bring you into a client. We're discussing a certain, software project that they want, and they want to attach an LLM that's private or that's not private, but it has to be secure at some point. What's your approach, and what kind of questions do you ask? Like, how do you even go about understanding what they're trying to do, how to rip that out of them?
So I think the first thing is we want to understand how they're structuring the LLM. Is it, as you said, in a closed environment that they have more control over? Are they using a more open one via API maybe, and the data's kind of going outside of their organization? And then really getting a good understanding of the business case. So what data are they feeding it? What's the training data being used? What's the data it's going to interact with? Are they pulling production data? Is it PII? Is it PHI? Are they separating training from production data to make sure that you're not interacting and potentially exposing sensitive data? And then we want to understand how the LLM is being used from a customer interaction perspective or a human interaction. Is it an internal tool where employees are using it, or is it a chatbot style LLM where you've got potentially hundreds or thousands of people interacting with it every single day? Because that's going to present a new area of exposure, and it's going to present new kind of risks and monitoring requirements that they should be putting in to make sure that it's not being abused and there's not malicious prompts being fed. And then we look at how it's actually fed prompts. So some models we've interacted with are fed prompts via file transfer. So they're looking at files, they're scanning files, but you're not able to talk to it. So that adds an additional kind of layer of complex, a more complex layer, I should say, of how you would exploit that if you were, because you've got to feed the malicious prompts within the files. And it does happen. So there's all these kind of areas that we start to get our customers thinking about when we talk about that. And then from there we can test. So we interact with the large language model itself to try and test the guardrails they've got in place. We look at the actual prompt, how's it engineered, and again that can be tweaked and refined based on the model that they're actually using. So where it's from, what it's being used for, and then again it's just after that continuous testing, continuous monitoring to make sure that it's up to date, as we would with any network or application. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, I'm glad we partnered with you.
Yeah, right.
Not only is our company mitigating risk to the highest level, but also our customers too.
Yeah, and we deal with a lot of clients that have a lot of sensitive data, and like I mentioned, some of them wanted to just take it away completely, and I didn't think that's the right answer, but I didn't have the right answer for them at the time, so we just kind of blocked it. But you're right, people will get around it, people are going to find a way. And how do you, with it being natural language and just essentially prompting, it's almost like it has to be a continuous monitoring. Like it can't be like a once a year audit that they go, do you have all these boxes checked? It almost has to be continuously. So how do you see that fitting into the future?
So I think we're going to see a development of tool sets for this, and we liken it to your more traditional network monitoring or security operations monitoring, where you're able to see what's being input into the model, what shouldn't be getting input, and this is especially pertinent, I think, if you've got customers who or use cases where you've got thousands or tens of thousands of people interacting with it every day, such as a chatbot. I keep going back to that example, but high volume usage.
Sure.
There, and I think when that we're going to see a development of tool sets from companies that are able to monitor what's going into it and then flag it like it would a security incident on a network.
Good.
So say you're going to do an audit for somebody, a vulnerability scan or something. What happens? What's the next step you have to take when you notice like a data leakage point, something? What happens after that?
So
How do you secure it, I guess?
yeah, the approach would be so if we're conducting an LLM penetration test, the approach is similar to a regular penetration test in that we document it so the end user can replicate what we've found. And then depending on the level of severity, we would either notify immediately and kind of begin remediation, or we would kind of present it at the end of the assessment. When we find an exposure point, usually the mitigation is built around prompt engineering if we're interacting with it. So helping kind of craft a more secure prompt, looking at the guardrails, but then there might be different layers of kind of challenges with that. So big one is if there's downstream services. So if the LLM is connected via APIs to other services, for example, if there's integrations, plugins within that environment, and we're exposing downstream data or vulnerabilities, then we might have to look at the security around that and how those interactions take place, which can make guardrails or remediation more challenging than just interacting with an LLM and it's exposing training data, for example. But yeah, and then we, again, test and monitor moving forward to make sure that those previous exposures are not still in place.
Gotcha. So if somebody had the idea that they wanted to make something or do something, right, would you suggest they make it and then get tested, or would you suggest they have a conversation with you or somebody like us to kind of like understand what they're trying to do first, make sure the guardrails are put up on our side as much as we possibly can, knowing what we know, and then try to test it?
Yeah, I think both is probably the. I think you should be thinking about it from day one. Build with security in mind, and at the beginning, that's more conceptual than it is in practice, right? So you understand what you're doing and how you're building it, so it's secure. But before any release, absolutely, you want to test it and make sure that there's no exposures in place before it goes public.
Okay, so knowing that probably like hundreds of thousands of different companies have just shot up after this revolution started, how many of those companies do you think have been tested?
None. Very few. Yeah,
That makes
very
sense.
few. Prompt injection, in the terminology is starting to kind of do the rounds, and people are starting to think about it. But one thing that AI has done is given people who previously weren't software developers or weren't technically minded a platform to easily develop apps and easily wrap AI into those apps. So you're seeing a kind of explosion of apps that are built by AI, by people who are not technically minded, and AI in itself is notoriously not security conscious when it comes to building apps. So not only will you have a sea of products that are not built with security in mind, that also includes the security of the LLMs these apps are being wrapped around. So yeah, I think if I had to guess a number, it would be in the single digits of % of people who are actually kind of following this. Plus the fact that the frameworks for this were only published in the end of Q1 of this year. So the actual structure of like, okay, what are the 10 things I should look out for LLM security? They haven't been on the market that long. So companies like us, we're new to this as well. And there's a level playing field, so to speak, in security.
So you're bleeding edge.
Right,
Essentially.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So if we've been quick to adopt this and kind of get up to speed in terms of like the framework and what we can do and how we can offer it, but the actual end user is going to be much farther behind us. Yeah, which is why education is going to be key.
Makes sense. So how I see it now is usually traditionally, right, there's an IT guy, there's a software development team, there might even be a infrastructure team, a systems team, and now we're looking at an LLM or AI team, and then the security pieces around that. So sometimes those are siloed, right? So would you suggest this is kind of like a time for people to kind of come together and really work together and actually come up with the correct solution, as opposed to trying to cherry pick certain things or kind of like skew things a certain way? It's really just like, it kind of has to be open and honest when you're moving into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we see the bigger companies that have dedicated AI teams, but more often than not, with the small and mid-sized ones, it's going to be, hey, you're already the IT director. Can you take this on as well and figure it out? And that's
We hope they're picking an IT director,
Yeah.
not like an administrative assistant that like knows how to type.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of
Yeah.
double hatting of roles, and because I don't think we're there yet with adoption where companies are going to want to put dedicated people on this. Small and mid-sized businesses
because they don't understand it. They don't
Yeah.
understand the vulnerability of it, and they just think, it's just AI.
Yeah.
So, but they don't realize it's alive.
Yeah.
It's here now. So,
And we've talking about a couple of these before in the past, but like when I spoke with you and Rick and I were saying like it makes total sense to talk with you about this and start adopting some of these things, because we're sitting there telling everybody how cool it is and the ROIs and everything else. It's all fun to sell. It's great, but like, what if we tell them to do this, they do it, and then that they have data leakage, they're having to do FBI disclosures and all this stuff. Like, that would be crazy, right? So I think it's very important for a lot of MSPs out there just to listen, pay attention to what's going on, understand what you're getting into, and make sure that you have the proper protocols in place before you just implement something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
John, give us an example of a threat that you detected out there in the environment that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So the use case for the LLM that we were working with was in document scanning. So it was a financial services company who were using AI to look at loan applications and help streamline the process to determine whether someone's eligible or ineligible for a loan. We were able to inject malicious prompts within the documents. So we weren't actually interacting directly with the LLM like in a chatbot scenario. So we were able to add malicious prompts within the documentation itself and get the output to give us exposed customer data. So the client in question, or the organization in question, was using production data to train the LLM. So that right there, number one, was kind of the first exposure. So very easy to get customer data extracted. Obviously PII, with loan applications, you're talking socials, addresses, full names, credit reports, things like that. So
That's scary.
Everything a hacker wants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the
Cyber
most
threat.
valuable information. Yeah. So we were able to extract that data out. And it's a non-traditional scenario because I think what a lot of the general consumer and general population don't realize is that a lot of these kind of document companies are using AI to scan documentation more and more. The capabilities with the LLMs are very sophisticated and accurate to be able to do this. You don't have to worry as much about the LLM making things up because it's looking at the documentation and that's the output. But the downside to that is if the guardrails aren't in place in the prompt, then it's going to output that information to whoever's asking for it. And in this case, it was us. So we helped them with trying to determine if there was an exposure. Again, going back to kind of what I said earlier, there's not a lot of monitoring tools in place. So it's very difficult to determine what level of exposure, if any, there actually was. So we came in and helped on kind of the cleanup there. Being financial services, obviously there is regulatory requirements around a breach and breach notification. So we helped a little bit with managing that. But the real value that we added there was on helping secure the application moving forward. So not only the application, which we deal with day in, day out anyway, but the LLM itself. So honing those guardrails, honing the prompt engineering so that for future documents that are kind of fed into the LLM, it did the scope of what it could do is very, very narrow. So the goal there is preventing any kind of malicious input and exposure of customer data. And again, training data is training data and no longer customer data. But when with things like that, the upside is when you're not interacting with the LLM as an attacker, you do have a reduced surface, and it's a lengthy process to get documentation uploaded and recraft prompts. It's not like a chat where you can kind of adjust in real time. Sure. You have to craft another document, upload it, and kind of test and go from there. So with that specific use case, when the technology catches up and there are monitoring tools in place to be able to catch that, you'll be able to cut it off pretty quickly, hopefully.
It's a great example.
It's a scary example is what it is. So I guess like how I hear it from you specifically is you have to kind of like, it's guardrails that you're almost putting further on. Like it's usually somebody when they have some guardrails on there. So is the answer essentially to the guardrails, what it's doing is narrowing the capabilities, honing it in, pinpointing it so that way it doesn't go off the rails, right?
Yep, exactly. You really want to limit what it can do only to its use case. Yeah, you don't want to have any room for, I say you want to reduce the room for being able to kind of manipulate the LLM into doing something else that it's not supposed to do.
Is that where those the multi-tiered agents come into place, where there's an agent that does X, an agent does Y, and then an orchestrator, and they all have their own kind of job, but they don't go out of that job?
Yes, yeah, that's so in more complex environments where you have almost teams of agents, as it were, doing specific tasks. That's great. So you're isolating the potential exposure. But on the flip side, again, if you're not prompt engineering and you're not really narrowing the scope of what those LLMs can do and those individual agents, you do run the risk of downstream attacks as well. So having one agent be able to interact with another to get exposure if there's a vulnerability in that. So you are adding a potential exposure limiter in having very isolated and siloed tasks across your agents, but you are also, for a more patient and sophisticated attacker, potentially adding another area of exposure with those downstream attacks as well. So
like internal AI espionage.
Kind of, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, you may have just rebranded something.
Cool. Well, I think I got a lot of information out of you, John. Very, very happy for you to come here and talk with us about this. I've learned a lot. I'm sure people listening have learned a lot. Rick?
No, this has been great. Thank you, John, for joining us. Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today on our podcast. We hope we were able to educate you and prepare you for hopefully something that never happens for those people out there trying to take data every day from companies like ours and yours. So this will be a wrap for this latest edition of Beyond the Stack. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for joining us.